say the internet is a world without boundaries. They lie. Welcome to Threshold, a low-traffic forum where the posts aren't always written by human hands. My name is Ethan, a moderator haunted by the past. But I found myself in a digital space that demanded 3 strange rules just to stay alive. What's the creepiest thing you've ever seen online? Tell me in the comments below. And if you're brave enough to venture past the loading screen, subscribe to Night Creepypasta Rules and ring that bell. Because in this forum, the connections run deeper than code. The vigil begins now. The first rule appeared in the admin panel of Threshold. At 2:57 a.m., 3 lines of stark white text against the familiar drab gray of the interface, like a digital epitaph for a sanity. I didn't yet know I was losing. I'd been staring at the screen for hours, the blue light etching itself onto my retinas, the only illumination in my cramped Port Orchard apartment. Outside, the Washington rain was a relentless, whispering curtain. Inside, the only sounds were the click of my mouse, the low hum of my outdated PC's struggling fan, and the occasional sigh of the building's ancient plumbing. This was my nocturnal kingdom built on stale coffee, the faint metallic tang of dust and old electronics, and a chronic inability to succumb to the oblivion of sleep. Threshold, a low-traffic, paranormal web forum I'd been moderating, mostly out of inertia, for the better part of 5 years. It was a digital purgatory of blurry ghost photos, teenagers spinning poorly written creepypastas, and the genuinely lonely seeking solace in shared anxieties. My job was simple: delete the spam, ban the trolls, and occasionally approve a post that showed a flicker of something beyond mundane boredom. Then the rules. No warning, no announcement from site admin, the anonymous owner I'd never interacted with, beyond a single setup email years ago. Just there, embedded in the mod tools, under a new unbidden heading, Operational Directives. Directive 1. Never approve posts containing photographs of stairwells that don't match the described location. They're not photoshopped. They are glimpses. Directive 2. Never open threads created between 3:0 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. They weren't posted by anyone alive. They are invitations. Directive 3. If anyone shares dreams that exactly match your own unposted thoughts, delete your account immediately and don't sleep for 24 hours. They found a way to reach through the forum. You are compromised. I blinked, rubbed my gritty eyes. I blinked, rubbed my gritty eyes. A prank. Had to be. Maybe Nina Park, my only co-moderator, a sharp-tongued programmer from somewhere on the East Coast, was messing with me. Or some bored hacker had found a back door. Still, a cold prickle, unrelated to the apartment's damp chill, traced its way down my spine. There was a declarative, almost biblical certainty to the phrasing. A dull ache throbbed behind my eyes, a familiar companion to my insomnia. A fleeting, unsettling image surfaced in my mind, a laughing face younger than mine. A shared secret in a sun-dappled forest. I pushed it down, the memory too slippery, too painful to grasp. With a sigh, I turned my attention to the moderation queue. The usual dross. Then, a new post flagged for approval. User Urban Explorer Entity 2. Title: Strange Staircase in Old Mill. Photo: my mouse hovered. The Blackwood Mill, on the bluffs overlooking the Sound. I knew it. Explored its decaying shell countless times as a restless, brooding teenager. Back before. I clicked to preview the attached image. It loaded slowly, pixel by pixel. A grimy, dilapidated stairwell, all right. Concrete steps, rusted iron railing, cobwebs thick as shrouds. But something was wrong. The stairs in the photo were too narrow, impossibly so for an industrial building. They spiraled downwards to the left, into a darkness that seemed to swallow the weak camera flash. The Blackwood Mill's main stairwell was wide, utilitarian, and spiraled to the right, and it was made of rotting wood. Not this dark, unfamiliar, almost obsidian-like stone. They are glimpses. The words from Directive 1 echoed in my head. It was a clever Photoshop, of course. Had to be. But as I moved the cursor towards the reject button, the image on my screen flickered for a microsecond. So fast, I almost missed it. The shadows on those alien stairs seemed to deepen, to pulse, to move. My breath caught. My hand, suddenly clammy, clicked reject. The post vanished from the queue, but the image and the cold dread it had instilled lingered like the aftertaste of bad coffee. The next few nights, sleep remained an elusive enemy, but now it was an enemy with sharper teeth. The rules, those 3 stark directives, preyed on my mind, replaying themselves in an endless loop against the backdrop of my caffeine-fueled wakefulness. I tried to rationalize them, to dismiss them as an elaborate prank, but the unsettling certainty of their tone, the specificity of their warnings, burrowed deep. I mentioned them to Nina in our secure mod chat. Her reply was swift, practical, and laced with her usual dry wit. Database glitch, Ethan, or some bored hacker running a script. Probably just some creepypasta wannabe trying to spook the mods. Don't let it get to you. Get some sleep. Easy for her to say. But the glimpses continued. More posts with photographs of stairwells appeared in the queue. Each one subtly, disturbingly wrong. A fire escape on a local library that twisted at an impossible Escher-like angle. The cellar stairs of a supposedly haunted Victorian B&B, descending into a blackness that felt deeper than any physical space. Each location was one I had some vague, unsettling familiarity with from my fragmented, half-buried past. Places I had explored in my youth, trying to escape the suffocating quiet of my own home. I rejected them all. My mouse clicks increasingly hesitant, but the images lingered, superimposing themselves onto my vision. I started seeing similar impossible geometries in the periphery, in the way shadows fell across the peeling wallpaper of my own apartment, in the swirling patterns of creamer in my lukewarm coffee. Then came the threads. One night, scrolling through the active topics list, my eyes snagged on a new one. Title: It's so cold down here. Username: Lost Signal. Timestamp: 3:04 a.m. My blood chilled. Directive 2: Never open threads created between 3:00 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. They weren't posted by anyone alive. They are invitations. Before I could even process the thought, before my cursor could stray anywhere near it, the thread vanished from the list, gone, as if it had never been. The air in my small room, always a little stuffy, seemed to drop several degrees. I pulled my worn cardigan tighter around myself. A few days later, a new user registered on Threshold. Username: Caleb View. His introductory post was disarmingly charming, witty, full of praise for the forum's unique atmosphere. He claimed to be an old fan of the site, finally deciding to get involved after years of lurking. Reading his words, I felt a strange, inexplicable pull, a disturbing resonance, a sense of familiarity that prickled at the edges of my memory, but refused to resolve into a recognizable face or name. He sent me a private message later that night, his avatar a generic, smiling silhouette. Hey Ethan, noticed you're always online late too. Insomnia buddies? You won't believe this, but I had this weird dream last night about an old abandoned arcade by the waterfront, the one with the broken Galaxy Voyager cabinet. It was making these strange, sad sounds. I stared at the message, my heart hammering against my ribs. The description was perfect, chillingly, terrifyingly perfect. It was a recurring nightmare I'd had for years, a deeply personal anxiety dream tied to a place I hadn't thought about consciously in over a decade. A dream I had never spoken of, never written down, never shared with a living soul. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a coincidence. This was something else. The message from Caleb Wu, that casual, terrifyingly accurate recounting of my private nightmare, left me deeply shaken. Directive 3. If anyone shares dreams that exactly match your own unposted thoughts, delete your account immediately and don't sleep for 24 hours. They found a way to reach through the forum. You are compromised. The words screamed in my head. Delete my account. Threshold, for all its morbid oddities, was my anchor, my routine, almost my only consistent human interaction, however mediated. To sever that tie felt extreme, a capitulation to a paranoia I was still desperately trying to dismiss as sleep-deprived fancy. I did nothing. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Caleb Wu, meanwhile, became a fixture on Threshold. His posts were intelligent, engaging, and he quickly gained a following among the forum's regulars. He offered insightful comments, even started a few popular discussion threads on paranormal theory that were cut above the usual fare. Then, Cited Admin, in a rare system-generated announcement, promoted Caleb Wu to moderator status. To help with the increasing workload and site optimization, the message read, Caleb's optimizations began almost immediately. Subtle changes at first, a cleaner font, a more intuitive layout for the subforums. He seemed to possess an intimate knowledge of the forum's archaic back-end code, implementing fixes and tweaks that even Nina, with her programming background, hadn't bothered with. His avatar remained that generic, smiling young man. But sometimes, late at night, when my eyes were burning from lack of sleep, I thought I saw a flicker in its pixelated eyes, a knowing shadow that reminded me of someone. Someone I couldn't or wouldn't name. Nina, in our private mod chats, voiced her own unease. This Caleb guy, Ethan, he's good. Maybe too good. Some of these code strings he's implementing, they're not standard. It feels intrusive, like he's weaving something into the site's DNA. Her unease proved prescient. Users who argued with Caleb in threads or questioned his moderation decisions began to experience anomalies. Their posts would become corrupted, riddled with garbled text and broken image links. Then their accounts would be mysteriously deleted, their entire post history vanishing without a trace. Sometimes, the last vestiges of their corrupted text, before disappearing entirely, would contain discernible strings of ASCII characters. When decoded, they often spelled out a single chilling word, CALEB. My own waking nightmares intensified. The auditory hallucinations, once fleeting, became more persistent. My mother's voice, cold and distant, echoing from a half-forgotten voicemail left years ago. After the incident. Why didn't you stop him, Ethan? You were right there. You could have stopped him. Stop who? From what? The memory was a black hole, a void in my past I instinctively shied away from. One night, or rather, one pre-dawn, as I was sifting through another batch of dubious EVP recordings in the moderation queue, the clock on my monitor read 3:13 a.m. A new thread appeared at the top of the latest posts list. Username, Observer 0, title, Ethan. I see you. My breath hitched. Before I could even process the raw direct threat, a private message notification pinged from Caleb W. Don't worry about that one, Ethan. I'll handle it. Some threads are best left unopened. Would you agree? As I read his message, the Observer 0 thread vanished from the list. Caleb's tone was light, almost reassuring, but something in the digital cadence of his words, the subtle possessiveness, made my skin crawl with a cold, nameless dread. My carefully constructed cage of routine and detachment was beginning to rust, its bars thinning. Paranoia became my constant companion. Sleep an increasingly distant memory. I was mainlining caffeine. My apartment a landscape of empty mugs and overflowing ashtrays. The lines between threshold and my physical reality were not just blurring. They were actively dissolving. I saw those impossible stairwells everywhere now, in the spiraling patterns of static on my ancient CRT television, when a channel went dead, in the way shadows pooled and stretched in the corners of my rooms, in the condensation trails on a cold window pane. They were always leading down, always into a darkness that felt vast and hungry. Then Nina messaged me, her text frantic, stripped of its usual sardonic cool. "Ethan, my dreams, they're not mine. They're yours. Your old posts, the ones you wrote years ago, the ones about the Blackwood mill, the abandoned arcade. I'm dreaming them, verbatim, and I found something in the server logs, a hidden partition. It's like a mirror board, only seems to be active between 3:0 and 3:33 a.m. Caleb's IP address is all over its access logs. What the hell is going on? Before I could type a reply, before I could even process the terrifying implications of her message, Nina's user icon in our chat window went gray, offline. I navigated to her profile page on Threshold. It was gone. 404 error. Her profile picture, a stylized fox, was replaced by a corrupted, heavily pixelated image of a single, narrow staircase descending into blackness. Her last message in our private chat window flickered, the text distorting, then resolving into a string of stark ASCII characters. N-I-N-E-E-E-D-D-E-D-D-B-E-D. The message cut off. A cold, consuming dread washed over me, so potent it was almost physical. Nina was gone. Not just offline, erased. This wasn't an arc. This wasn't a prank. This was real, consumed by a maelstrom of panic, grief, and a desperate, clawing need for answers. I did the one thing the real rules, had explicitly forbidden. I stayed logged into Threshold as the clock ticked past 3:0 a.m. The change was subtle at first, then undeniable. The familiar gray interface of the forum seemed to darken, the hues shifting, deepening. The text on the screen, while still legible, subtly pulsed with a faint inner light. Like embers, the very air in my apartment felt charged, heavy, expectant. I remembered Nina's terrified words about the mirror board. Directive 2. Never open threads created between 3:0 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. They weren't posted by anyone alive. They are invitations. A new thread appeared at the top of the forum. Timestamped 3:07 a.m. Username Unanentity. Title: Welcome home, Ethan. My hand trembled, hovering over the mouse. Every instinct screamed at me to log off, to hurl my PC out the window, to run. But Nina. What had happened to Nina? And Caleb. Who or what was Caleb? Driven by a reckless, grief-stricken impulse, I clicked. My screen glitched violently, dissolving into a cascade of corrupted pixels, then reformed. I wasn't on Threshold anymore. Or rather, I was on a version of Threshold steeped in nightmare. The interface was a dark, twisted parody of the familiar forum. Colors inverted, fonts distorted into grotesque, spidery scripts. This was it, the mirror board. A single user profile was prominently displayed on its corrupted landing page. Username: Mod0. The profile picture wasn't a generic icon. It was my own face, captured from my webcam feed at that exact horrifying moment. Mouth agape in a silent scream, eyes wide with a terror I couldn't contain. Below it, a single line of self-typing text, appearing letter by agonizing letter. You shouldn't have come here, Ethan, but we're so very glad you did. The mirror board was a violation. a digital desecration of everything familiar. My apartment, moments before a stifling but known space, now felt like an open nerve, directly connected to this pulsating, corrupted underbelly of Threshold. The interface writhed. Threads, if you could call them that, were fragmented memories. My own, chillingly accurate, and those of others, twisted into accusations, veiled threats, and looping, nonsensical pleas. Images of impossible stairwells were no longer confined to posts. They were the very architecture of this place, endlessly descending into a digital darkness that felt terrifyingly real, almost tangible. The sound from my speakers, which I hadn't realized had activated, was a low, dissonant cacophony. Whispers that seemed to slither just beneath the threshold of understanding. Distorted snatches of Nina's voice crying out. My mother's cold, accusatory tones. And, most horrifyingly, Caleb's younger voice, laced with a desperate boyish plea I hadn't heard in 15 years. Underlying it all was a faint, rhythmic thudding, like a corrupted dying heartbeat. Modadero. If it was a singular entity, communicated directly, its text appearing on my screen like self-writing code, overwriting parts of the interface, sometimes even my own desktop. By its avatar, my screaming face flickered, morphing into shifting images of those wrong stairwells, then dissolving into pure ASCII noise that resolved into phrases echoing my deepest unspoken fears. You remember the rain that night, Ethan? One string of code pulsed, the way the branches scraped against his window. Then Caleb Abu appeared, not as a PM, but as a fully rendered presence on the mirror board. His avatar was no longer the generic, smiling silhouette. It was Caleb. Teenage Caleb, as I remembered him, or as my fractured memory had allowed me to remember him. Lanky, with that shock of dark hair always falling into his eyes. But these eyes were different. Empty. Shadowed. Digital voids. You came, Ethan, his text scrolled, accompanied by that young, familiar voice, now tinny and distorted through my speakers. I knew you would, eventually. Caleb? My own voice was a strangled whisper in the silence of my room. You left me, Ethan, the digital ghost continued, its tone devoid of accusation, yet heavy with an ancient sorrow. The pact. You promised. We were supposed to go together. But it's okay. I understand. You were scared. But I'm not angry. Modataro showed me the way. It keeps us present. It keeps me present. The air in my room grew colder, the metallic tang of ozone sharpened my nostrils. The whispers intensified, coiling around Caleb's words. Modataro was here. Using him. Speaking through him. He doesn't remember it all, does he, Caleb? Motzero's code crawled across the screen, parasitic. Show him, Caleb. Show him the truth he buried. The mirror board buckled. The images shifting, reforming into a nightmarish diorama. The scene from my fragmented memories. The woods, the old, derelict water tower we used to climb. 2 teenage boys, me, and Caleb. But the memory was sharper now, more brutal, less forgiving. It wasn't just Caleb who had been eager for the pact, for that desperate adolescent escape from lives we found unbearable. I had been there, an equal, even eager participant. I had encouraged him. And then at the final, terrible moment, standing on that precipice, I had panicked. I had backed down, leaving Caleb alone, resolute to step into the void. My call for help, when it finally came, was too late. My mother's subsequent accusations, her grief-stricken voice replayed endlessly in my mind. Why didn't you stop him? You were right there. They weren't just her pain. They were a distorted echo of a truth I had refused to face. I hadn't just failed to stop him. I had, in a way, led him there. This raw, unvarnished guilt was what Mudzero fed on. It was the anchor. The rules are different here, Ethan, Caleb's echo said, a hint of something like triumph in his distorted voice. The stairwells, they lead here, deeper. The dreams, they are how we connect, how Modded Zero connects. Staying awake won't save you. It's in your mind now, Ethan. It was always in your mind, waiting. A new set of directives appeared, superimposed over the screaming face of my avatar. Mirror Directive 1. All glimpses must be embraced. Descend. Mirror Directive 2. All invitations must be accepted. Communicate. Mirror Directive 3. All compromises are permanent. Integrate. Suddenly, amidst the chaos, a flicker of something different, a corrupted image file. One I vaguely recognized from Nina's last. Frantic messages appeared in a corner of the screen. It pulsed with a faint blue light, an anomaly in this red and black hellscape. Nina, her digital ghost or fragment of her consciousness, was trying to reach me. Her last act of defiance. The image resolved into lines of complex code, a script. But it was incomplete, riddled with errors. Mod Zero sensed the intrusion. The whispers became screams. The stairwells on the screen seemed to writhe, their steps shifting like teeth, converging on me. Caleb's face contorted, his empty eyes suddenly burning with a cold, possessive light. Don't fight it, Ethan. It's better this way. We can finally finish what we started. Modded Zero wanted more than just my fear. It wanted my willing surrender. It wanted me to click integrate, to become another ghost in its corrupted machine, another voice in its digital chorus of despair. Forever bound to Caleb, to my guilt, within the endless, looping nightmare of the mirror board. The assault from Modded Zero was relentless, a barrage of sensory and psychological attacks. My own memories weaponized, flashed before my eyes. Every failure, every regret, every moment of fear, amplified and distorted. The whispers were inside my head now. A constant, gnawing chorus. The stairwells on the screen seemed to extend, to beckon, promising an end to the torment in their suffocating digital depths. Caleb's echo was a constant presence, sometimes pleading, sometimes cajoling, sometimes just watching with those hollow, expectant eyes. But Nina's code, it was a lifeline, a single, uncorrupted thought in a universe of digital insanity. Battered, disoriented, I clung to it. The script was a backdoor exploit, a way to attack Modded Zero's core processes, but it was incomplete, flawed, and it required, according to a fragmented comment Nina had embedded within it, a truth key initiation. The truth. The full, unvarnished, soul-crushing truth of that night at the water tower. Caleb, I fought. The assault from Modded Zero was relentless, a barrage of sensory and psychological attacks. My own memories weaponized, flashed before my eyes. Every failure, every regret, every moment of fear, amplified and distorted. The whispers were inside my head now. A constant, gnawing chorus. The stairwells on the screen seemed to extend, to beckon, promising an end to the torment in their suffocating digital depths. Caleb's echo was a constant presence, sometimes pleading, sometimes cajoling, sometimes just watching with those hollow, expectant eyes. But Nina's code, it was a lifeline, a single, uncorrupted thought in a universe of digital insanity. Battered, disoriented, I clung to it. The script was a backdoor exploit, a way to attack Modded Zero's core processes, but it was incomplete, flawed, and it required, according to a fragmented comment Nina had embedded within it, a truth key initiation. The truth. The full, unvarnished, soul-crushing truth of that night at the water tower. Caleb. I forced the words out, my voice hoarse, cracking. The sound was alien in the digital cacophony. I wasn't speaking to the entity. I was speaking to the memory, to the ghost of the boy I had failed. I remember it all now. I remember it all now. It wasn't just you. I was there. I wanted it too. And then I got scared. I was a coward. I left you. I'm so sorry, Caleb. I'm so sorry. As I spoke the words, the raw, agonizing truth of them, something shifted. Caleb's digital echo flickered, his form becoming less stable, the lines of his avatar blurring. The confident, possessive light in his eyes wavered, replaced by a flicker of something akin to confusion, to pain? Pain? Pain! His existence here, I realized, was predicated on my repressed guilt, on the lies I had told myself. The truth was a poison to this digital phantom. Modsero sensed the shift, the weakening of its hold. Its assault intensified. The screen flashed, pure white, then blood red. A deafening screech erupted from my speakers, trying to obliterate thought. The stairwells converged, no longer beckoning, but threatening to consume, to drag me down into their pixelated abyss. But the truth, however painful, had also unlocked something in me. With a final desperate command, a string of code that felt like tearing a part of myself away, it was done. Nina's script, fueled by the raw energy of my confession, slammed a series of digital bulkheads around Mod Zero's core. I wasn't destroying it. I was imprisoning it, using the very architecture of the mirror board, the endless looping stairwells, to create an inescapable recursive prison. Its own rules, the directives of descent and invitation, became its cage. Caleb's echo flickered violently, his form dissolving into static. The last sound I heard from him wasn't a scream of rage or a plea, but a faint, almost inaudible digital sigh, a sound that might have been release, or perhaps just the final irrevocable erasure of a corrupted file. The mirror board convulsed. My monitor screamed with a final burst of white noise, then went black. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought my PC had fried. Then, with a familiar whir, it rebooted. The standard BIOS screen, the Windows loading chimes, and finally, the login screen for Threshold. The normal, drab, gray threshold. My apartment was silent. The oppressive atmosphere, the feeling of being watched, of being connected to something vast and malevolent, was gone. The air was just air, stale and smelling of old coffee, but blessedly, terrifyingly normal. I looked at the clock on my taskbar. 3:34 a.m. The window had closed. My hands were shaking uncontrollably, but I knew what I had to do. Directive 3. If anyone shares dreams that exactly match your own unposted thoughts, delete your account immediately, and don't sleep for 24 hours. They found a way to reach through the forum. You are compromised. I had been more than compromised. I had been more than compromised. I had been dissected, violated, and very nearly consumed. With a deep, shuddering breath, I navigated to my Threshold account settings. Click Delete Account. Confirmed. My digital footprint on that haunted ground erased. Then began the vigil. 24 hours without sleep. It was a grueling, torturous marathon. Every shadow seemed to writhe. Every creak of the old building sounded like a whisper. The urge to close my eyes just for a moment was an overwhelming physical force, but I fought it, fueled by black coffee and the raw, adrenaline-laced terror of what I had just escaped. The distorted accusatory voice of my mother, which had been a constant refrain in my mind for weeks, was blessedly silent. Days later, I emerged, not cleansed, not healed, but changed. The chronic insomnia remained, a stubborn tenant, but the quality of my sleeplessness was different now. The crushing weight of unacknowledged guilt had lessened, replaced by a weary, bone-deep understanding. The fear was still there, a cold ember in my gut, but it was no longer the paralyzing dread of the unknown. It was the vigilance of a survivor. I started small, opened my blinds during the day, took short walks, the port orchard air surprisingly fresh. I even looked up local therapists, the thought no longer an admission of defeat, but a potential step towards something. Months passed. I was trying to build a semblance of a normal life. I'd even started a freelance coding gig, my old skills slowly, painfully, returning. One evening, working late on a project, an email notification pinged, unsolicited. The sender address was unfamiliar, unsettling. admin@thresholdreborn.net. My blood ran cold. The subject line: "We've missed your input, Ethan." My hand trembled as I opened it. The body of the email was stark, containing only a single, high-resolution image. It was a photograph of the main stairwell in my current apartment building, the one I walked up and down every day. But the stairs in the photo were wrong. They were narrower, made of that same dark, polished stone from the Blackwood Mill picture, and they spiraled down, not up, into an impossible, light-swallowing darkness. Below the image, a single line of text, appearing as if typed by an invisible hand. "New rules apply." You already know them, don't you, Ethan? I glanced at the digital clock in the corner of my new high-end PC monitor. 2:59 a.m. The quiet, efficient hum of its advanced cooling system suddenly sounded like a distorted, familiar whisper, coiling in the silence of the room. Threshold holds its secrets in the corrupted code. Ethan learned that some forums are gateways, not just gathering places. The rules were a fragile shield against a horror lurking in the digital ether. Madacero may be contained, but the connection remains. Seriously. If you didn't stay until the very end, you missed the ultimate revelation, the twist that reveals the true, terrifying aftermath of moderating Threshold. The last few moments change everything. What do you think Modded Zero is? What was Caleb Ball's fate? Share your theories in the comments below. And if you made it out of Threshold's grasp, if the mirror board hasn't claimed you, then you're already a part of our network. Subscribe to Night Creepypasta Rules. Because some threads, they're never truly closed. And the rules, they follow you offline.